What I'm going to do right now is take you through the process of creating a character using Hero Lab Online or Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Right now, what you're looking at is Hero Lab Online, the interface for it. First thing you'll notice is that where I am right now is under the characters section of Hero Lab Online. There is a campaign section, but I'm going to focus on creating characters today. So that's what we're going to do. In this interface, I have a way in which I can organize my characters. I tend to like to break things out by types of characters. From the types of characters, what I mean by that is by the types of games that they're in, either stuff that's related to adventure paths, stuff that's specifically for Pathfinder Society. I have a folder that I use for just kind of theory crafting characters. I also have a place where I stick characters I'm no longer going to play and just retire them off. And of course, occasionally people ask me to create stuff, so I stick them in their own folders and whatnot. That's just the way in which I organize it. The idea here, of course, is that you just organize this in a way that makes the most sense for you. However you want to do that, if it's by class, if it's by campaign, whatever the case may be, the folders are a great way to make that organization easy when you're accessing Hero Lab Online. So for today, I'm going to go into my tutorials folder. You can see that I've already created two characters in this folder itself. And if I need to move them, easily hit the little 3 dots there that's on the right of them, right of the character itself. And I have the ability to move things around, rename it, duplicate it, things like that. So if you're trying out a couple things with a character, like theory crafting, duplicating is a great way to have one take, make some changes, see what it looks like. But let's get straight into the process of creating that character itself. So there's this nice little red button here, very prominently displayed, that shows you how you get started. You create the character. Now, when I do this, it asks for a couple things like the character's name and what type of character they are. They could be an NPC. There's a lot of different options here, but generally speaking, I live with I only ever really create player characters here. I'm not really GMing a whole heck of a lot. The other aspect that's potentially important for you is whether this is a Pathfinder Society organized play character. So checking this little checkbox will indicate that, and that changes a couple things in the screens. For all intents and purposes, though, I'm going to create a non-PFS character, and I'm going to try and do one of the more, I will say, slightly more involved classes for the 2nd edition. I'm going to actually create a wizard. The reason why I'm going to do that is because there's a few extra things that are applicable for wizards, namely spells and familiars potentially, that involve going through a couple other things. So once you've seen that, you'll have the idea of how this applies for all the characters. What you see with a wizard, these will apply for a ranger with an animal companion, or classes that don't have either of those aspects. There's less work you need to do. This should get you the full picture, essentially. So we're going to create a fellow by the name of Harry. He's Harry the Wizard. I'm not feeling very creative today. And we're just going to create this character. Now, first thing you'll notice is that I have a new entry that shows up here for Harry the Wizard. There's not a whole heck of a lot of information about him right now. Not even a picture. Yeah, we'll get into how that's done there in a little bit. But the first thing you're going to want to do now this character's created is go into the character, just click on it, and start fleshing out the details here. Now, when you open or create a new character, go into a new character, I should say, that hasn't been set up, there's a lot of stuff that essentially you need to fill out, just like you would be filling out a character sheet if you were doing a pen and paper approach to things. You're going to have stuff you're going to need to fill out to give life to this character. Hero Lab gives you a good clue as to all of the things you need to do, so you're not kind of clicking around trying to figure out what needs to be filled out or if you've forgotten anything. On the left-hand side is where all the navigation occurs. The top section, the first section, is around play, which is stuff you'll do when you're actually playing the character, say at a table, or if you do play by post like me, then that will be where you do updates after your character is created generally. But really, you're going to focus more on the character, classes, and ability sections, as well as equipment itself. The other sections below for adventuring and customize are really more things that happen after the character is created. So we're really going to focus on, we'll call it the second, third, fourth, and fifth sections on the left-hand side here. But everything I need to do is indicated out in either red or yellow. Red being, proper errors, things you absolutely need to fill out, and the yellows being warnings, things that for whatever reason could potentially be optional, or maybe there's different things around it, but it's ultimately not going to flag it as a proper error. I'll admit that the categorizations that Hero Labs does here is somewhat unclear to me, because a background to me seems like a pretty required thing, but for whatever reason, it's flagged as yellow. So I just use either color as an indicator, frankly, to tell me, hey, there's something I need to do to flesh out, or there's something not quite right with how I've created this character. And I work my way down. I may jump around a little bit, especially when you get to the classes portion, because some of the stuff is still going to show as at least warnings until you've determined what your class is, which is typical for creating a Pathfinder 2nd edition character. There's going to be some stuff that will be contingent upon what your class is. So we'll work through that, but I'll try to go down in order, try and follow that ABC methodology of ancestry, background, then class in terms of the order of the choices that I'm going to make. So my wizard Harry, he's a good guy. I'm going to pick his alignment now. I may have gone a little bit too quick there, so let me close that. The first thing you want to do, and this is really going to occur anywhere within the system, anytime you need to populate something, usually there's a little plus here at the top right of that section. You just click on that. That pulls up a window that gives you all the options that are related to that. So for alignment, I click the little plus, and it shows me all the 9 alignments that are core to Pathfinder. I've decided that this wizard is a good guy, but he's not necessarily the paladinish good guy, so I'm going to go with neutral good. This is a perfectly arbitrary choice for this tutorial, but the nice thing is I pick that and I see some of the descriptions around that alignment. So it's not just, I can of course go back into it if I need to, just by clicking on it. It just tells me a little bit more about that alignment itself. So I'm not making necessarily decisions in the blind when I'm doing this. If I'm not sure what a thing is, Hero Lab is really helpful in giving you a clue as to what you're looking at there. And we'll see more of that as we go along. I've picked his alignment. I could pick a deity if I wanted to. I could flesh out some of his physical description type stuff, which is usually what you populate in as part of the character profile itself, as well as picking their image. That's all well and good. This is all I really need for the profile section, though. Like I said, I could fill in the other details. They're not required. All right, so next thing we need to do is go into our ancestry. This is, part of that ABC methodology, right? We pick our ancestry here. So I'm going to click the plus again, and I see the core ancestry showing up here. You'll notice that there is a option checked off for hide invalid choices. So toggling this will unleash for me the uncommon ancestry. So if you are using the advanced player's guide, say you either for an adventure path, you got access to some of the uncommon ancestries, or for Pathfinder Society, you've got access to one of those ancestries. You can uncheck that little option there to hide those invalid choices. I like to keep this on, mostly because in most cases, this is going to mean that I'm not looking at a lot of extraneous information. But for certain cases, you may want to toggle that on and off depending on what you need to do. All right, so I've decided that Harry is a human. And again, clicking on human shows me details around that ancestry itself. And all the details around it, the descriptions, the general society alignment, all that stuff. This comes straight out of the core rulebook, really. And just add that in there. And once I've made that decision around his ancestry, a couple other things open up for me. the fact that I need to pick a specific heritage, for example, comes into play. Again, I click the plus, pick my specific heritage. I may decide that this wizard is going to be particularly skilled. So select skilled heritage. I could pick an ancestry. Again, things that are required or you should be filling out will generally show up in yellow, even yellow text on it, or red if they are absolutely required. And some of the stuff that's optional, like ethnicity, for example. I see all the stuff that's there, but it's not necessarily a required element to creating your character. But for kicks, I'm going to decide that this fellow is Talden. Little Harry, he's a Talden wizard. I'll add in the ancestry feat as well too. So for this wizard, I'm going to make a couple points here to show some things that continue the feed the tree of choices, if you will. So if I pick something like natural ambition, which actually is a feat I like, I'll see when I add that, it adds in natural ambition at the bottom, and it gives me the option to add a class feed specifically based on that. Now you may be thinking, well, hang on, I'm not going to be able to do that because I don't have a class selected. This goes back to what I was saying earlier about sometimes what you'll need to do is come back to these prior sections so that you can populate the details, because if you just go down straight to order when you don't have a class selected, you're not going to be able to necessarily fill some of this stuff out. You'll see that that's true for natural ambition. Because I picked skilled heritage, this is also true here. I click on skilled heritage, it shows me that I may pick a skill and be trained in it. I haven't done that yet because I haven't even gotten to the skills yet. So that'll show up once I get to the skills, and these validation warnings will go away once I've selected those. We'll see that in a little bit. All right, so I've got the basics for what I need here right now, knowing full well there are a couple choices I need to make that are contingent upon some other things, like what skill I want to pick and what class I pick. But I'm going to move into the background right now. All right, so for the background, again, you have your options around languages and around background. Now, languages is going to be another one of those areas that could change. I probably will need to come back here, especially if I'm making a wizard who's based off of intelligence. Surprise, surprise. He'll get more languages at the start of his adventuring career. So we'll probably have to come back to this. But right now, it's telling me that I have one language I need to add. So I know for sure that I want to pick Sylvan for this guy. So Harry's close to the Fae, and so he's had an opportunity to learn their language. And let's pick a background as well too. And again, I have hide and valid choices selected here. If I uncheck that, I'll see some of the options that show up here. Some of them that are campaign specific I happen to have. Some of the content for Age of Ashes as well too. So some of the options I'll see here are either from the Advanced Player's Guide or Age of Ashes and whatnot. But again, I'm going to keep my list as narrow as possible. Scroll down to it. Now, I may have decided that for this guy, I know I want him to be a sage. So I'm just going to use the search. I guess I don't have that actually turned on. Sage? No, it's scholar. See, there you go. I'm typing things wrong. I wanted scholar. So if I start typing scholar, it shows me all the options here. I have dragon scholar, which comes from Age of Ashes. And I have scholar of the ancient Talden schemer. You'll notice that this name doesn't even have the word scholar in it, but it does pick off of some of the text within it. So the search is actually quite useful in that sense, because sometimes you'll just start searching for something and actually it's right there, schemer instead of scholar. If I take the O, add the O in, it should disappear. Yeah. So, but I wanted scholar, sorry. Let's add that in. All right, so I've picked that, and again, because I picked scholar, you get assurance in a particular skill. Again, another decision I'm going to need to make. The nice thing here is that I can click on this and decide what I want that to be right now. But as it stands, you'll notice that the list only shows me academia lore. Academia lore I got for free because I picked scholar, so I'm automatically trained in that. So it's the only one that shows up in this list right now. So this realistically is something I'm also going to want to come back to, because I don't necessarily want to give myself assurance in academia lore, but the system is only picking up on things you're trained in, which is how assurance works. You have to be trained in it at the very least. So it's constantly doing those validations for you. But we'll come back to this because I know I need to fill in my skills still. You can see that on the left-hand side. So this is another area in which I'm going to want to come back to. You'll find that there's a little bit of this moving around that you'll need to do to make this work for you. Similarly, Scholar also gives me training in a skill, and it's telling me right now that I need to select that. We'll sort all this stuff out, but for now, our background stuff is as filled in as we can have at this point until we get into the class and the skills and whatnot. So I'm going to move to the class next, the fun stuff. It's always fun picking your class. I've decided that this character is a wizard because I literally named him Harry the Wizard. So it seemed a little bit foregone. But in any case, now I've added my wizard on. Again, I saw all the lists there. It's all well and good. And since he's a level 1 character, I want to be able to spend some money. This is where I would pick my starting wealth here. So I can either use a standard starting wealth, or I can uncheck this and put in specific gold piece amounts so he may have as his starting wealth for a first level character. So if you're playing in an adventure path and have a particularly GM or a generous GM, he might give you more gold to start with, or maybe you use rolling to determine how much gold you start off with. This is where you could edit that. But I'm going to use the standard starting wealth and accept that. And once I've done that, this basically says, hey, this guy's now got 15 gold pieces that he can spend on gear. We'll get to gear in just a little bit. But that's some of the basic stuff right there. But the first thing that happened after I picked wizard is that I see right underneath my classes, it shows wizard. So I'll click on that. And in here is where I get to really flush out all of my decisions around the class that I've chosen itself. You see the class proficiencies, the spellbook. Automatically it adds a spellbook for you. So I have that showing up as my class starting gear, that spellbook that's there. Information around the class features as well too, and it's really nice. You can just click on any of these and get information around them. So even not necessarily things that are driven by character creation, but if you're like, hey, what does Arcane Thesis do? What are the specifics? Instead of having to pull up the rule book or look it up online, it's right there too as well. So it can often save you a lot of searching around as you play the game. I'm just going to keep scrolling through, however, and start picking out some of my choices here. This is one of my favorites to pick. I love picking the Arcane School. So I've decided that, well, there's a lot of interesting choices here. But I'm just going to make this guy a universalist. I'm perhaps a bit of a outlier in that I like the universalist. So I'm going to make this guy universalist. He really wants to be balanced. And so universalist it is. Also, in terms of Arcane Thesis, I've got a few different choices here. Now, I'm personally a big fan of spell substitution, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to go with improved familiar attunement. So I want to show you what it's like to add familiars into it. It's another little aspect to character creation that you'll need to consider or have some familiarity with when you're actually doing this. All right, so I'm going to add improved familiar attunement. That's my Arcane Thesis. Really just gearing towards this guy making the most of familiars. I get a class feat. And I'm going to pick. That doesn't really matter. I guess I have option for Hand of the Apprentice. So let's pick Hand of the Apprentice. As we use a focus spell and have a focus pool. And then, of course, the master abilities. So one thing that you get when you have a familiar is the ability to pick either master or familiar abilities. I'm going to leave this portion right now because the thing you have to remember when creating a wizard specifically is that the familiar abilities are there's whatever familiar you pick, you are required to pick the abilities that kind of align with that animal. So if you have a bat as a familiar, it needs to have a fly speed. And that's an actual familiar ability you need to pick, which cuts against the number of master abilities you could theoretically use. So I'm going to leave this portion deliberately blank right now, because once I flush out the familiar, then I'll see what kind of familiar ability resources I've got left to spend. And then there is a section around the spellcasting itself. So I can see here, it's telling me straight away, nice red warning, that I have to add 10 more cantrips and 6 more first level spells to my spellbook as free advancements. So scroll back up. I did skip the spellbook here. But to do that, I can just scroll up to our starting gear, click on Spellbook. And this is where I can either use things to buy additional spells and pick my Wizard Arcane Spellcasting option here. Or I can do the free advancements. So I have 16 free advancements, 10 cantrips, and 6 first level spells. When I click the plus, this is where I get my options here. Now, this categorization is actually really helpful in that you don't necessarily want to have to look at that full list of all of the spells. It can make it really challenging when you're trying to do this through the core rulebook, especially if you don't have a lot of familiarity with what spells do, or coming over from first edition and are unfamiliar with all of the changes that occurred. This is a great way in which to make that kind of decision-making process a lot easier. If I just start with cantrips, I only see the cantrips, and I can look at each one's description itself. So I'm going to click through 10 of them real quickly. He's a universalist, doesn't really matter. I'm just going to pick a couple key ones here, so I don't have any validation errors. Always good to have shield and read aura. I already grabbed detect magic. I'm kind of clicking through real fast. One thing that's a little bit of a gotcha is if you're going really quick like me, you're probably not counting how many you've added. So I don't really know if I've got more spells to add or not at this point. So what I can do, hide this little button here will actually hide the window that I've got, and I can see the window behind here, so I can see that I got 3 more cantrips and 6 more first level spells. Great. So only 3 more to add. I unhide that dialogue, and I'll add in things like Ray of Frost. Let's get some of our damage dealing spells in here. Use Flame. And what do we got left? Let's add Message. All right, cool. Now, I've done my cantrips here. I can hit this little arrow to go back, and now it takes me back to this category selection screen as before. I'm going to pick my first level spells. I only have 6 to pick this time around, but I'm just going to pick some of the old staples here. Good old Grease, Magic Missile. Let's grab Summon Animal. Can't go wrong with a summoning spell. And then try and get some stuff that's not combat specific. Let's go with... I'm actually a fan of Alarm, so I'm going to add Alarm. I'm going to add Featherfall. Definitely cases for Featherfall to be useful. And Unseen Servant. You never know. Cool. We've got all our options in there. You'll notice I clicked Add and Close. That's a great way to kind of, once you're done with something, you can just click that button and add the option you want, and then close the dialog instead of doing 2 clicks. All right, so our spellbook is populated, but I still got this validation error, right? Part of that is because I've got some master abilities, but more importantly, it wants me to memorize spells. So this is where I actually define what spells I'm going to memorize itself. I have 5 cantrips I can pick up and 2 first level spells. Let's just add those real quickly. I have a couple staples. Can't go wrong with Detect Magic or Read Aura. I feel like those are kind of staples now for a wizard. I want something that's a damage dealing spell. I'm a big fan of Ray of Frost. And let's slap an Electric Arc. It's our cantrips. And 4 first level spells. Let's do Summon Animal. All right. Spells are done. Now we see that it's gone from red to yellow, and we know that's because of the master abilities, which we'll come back to. Now I've skipped a bunch of stuff around ability scores. Some people who are old school would have expected that this is the type of place you would start with, but I'm really following it in the order. And I already know that I'm building wizards, so for the most part, my ability scores are going to be fairly evident for me. I know I want to max out intelligence, so I'm going to do that. I should explain this here real quick. So I can see each of these columns. This is where I dictate what my choices are going to be. So at first level, you get to essentially pick 4 ability boosts that you have to spread out. So I will have 4 options there, and you can see here at first level it says 1 to 4. You get 2 based off of your ancestry because you're human. It's 2, and it's 2 free ones that you place however you like. Your background, you get 2. 1 that has to be based off of one of these 2 options, and 1 that can be a free one. So I could do int and whiz, or I could do whiz and one of the other ones, or int and whatever. I'm going to do intelligence because this is a wizard. Intelligence is important for a wizard. And let's make this guy a little bit tough. I want him to be survivable. Let's give him a dex con. Wisdom will help with both some of the knowledge checks he's going to make, some of the skills, and also saves. I could bump up dex again or constitution. Let's go with, you know what? I'm going to take a risk and make sure that he's really solid at all the skill checks, and that will help his will saves as well too. So, all right, my ability scores are been determined: 10, 12, 14, 18, 14, 10. Not bad. It's all right. And then what I'll just do is I'll progress onto our skills. So the skills section is actually pretty similar to what you see with the ability scores. Columns called out here telling you where you can pick choices, either based off of your heritage choice, like in this case, skilled heritage, wizard being the class one, scholar being my background, or other, if there are other things that you're getting the ability to choose skill training in, because this is what we're essentially doing right now. We're determining which skills we have training in. So that has nothing to do with becoming an expert or master or legendary. That's actually in this section here, but we're not going to focus on that. We're building a level 1 character. So everything should be trained. So let's pick the things we got. It's already populated out some of the stuff we get. Like we automatically got academia lore from our scholar background. And then it allows me to pick out some of the other ones. I've already got Arcana, and it does give me an indicator that these are I need to have one of these as a required option. So I get academia lore and my choice of Arcana, nature, occultism, or religion. Now these stars usually mean you have to pick one of them. It doesn't mean you have to pick all of them. So there will be some cases where you might be able to pick multiple choices, just like what we saw with the ability scores. But the star means you have to pick one of them. Which is in line with how the rules work. So I'm going to pick religion for the scholar. He studied a lot of things of a religious nature as part of his scholarly studies. So that takes care of that. And I have an indicator here telling me 1 of 1. So I've done all my picking here for my background. Still have 0 of 7 to pick for my wizard. I got Arcana already for it, but let's pick int-based stuff. So pick crafting, occultism, society. We're running out of intelligence-based stuff. I already have Arcana. Well, let's go with stuff that's based off of wisdom then. So we've already got, we picked occultism. Let's grab nature. I still have 4 left to pick. I don't like giving wizards nothing that's of a physical nature. His dex isn't a dump. So let's give him our acrobatics so he can at least make the check and not suck at it too badly. Let's say he's also adept at understanding the way the world works and give him survival. Why not? We've got all these extra points and medicine. So yeah, I'm avoiding all the social stuff sort of on purpose, but it's okay. I think we're just making choices at this point. It's not really pertinent to what we're trying to do. I'll pick diplomacy. Why not? We'll give him the 1. Not great at it, but he's got the options. So now I still have some stuff to fill out. So this is where we'll go back. We'll go back to our ancestry and say, okay, for natural ambition, we know now that we're a wizard. So what do I want to have as my class skill? My class feat, I should say. So we're going to pick up reach spell. Reach spell's good. And for our backgrounds, we're just going to clear up some of the validations here. Remember, I mentioned this already around the languages stuff. So I'm going to, because of the intelligence, pick some additional languages. Let's go with Dwarven, Elven, Goblin, and Undercommon. Nah, Draconic. I'll go with the language of the dragons. All right, and for Wizard, we still have some stuff to fill out. Remember, it's going to show up here. Ah, yes, that's right. Our master abilities are left out. So I'm going to... Now, the next thing I should be doing is hitting on the equipment. And if I didn't have a familiar, that would be where I would be going next. But I'm going to do the familiar stuff next, and then we'll hit on equipment. So to get to my familiar, all the way on the right-hand side, I have the ability to click here up characters. I can either go back to all characters, which will take me back out of my character screen right now, or I can go to my familiar itself. So the familiar basically has their own character entry, but they're kind of a child entry under your main character. You even see that there's a button up at the top left here that allows you to jump back to the main character very easily. For this familiar, I'm going to say that they are an owl. So, forget the owl's name. The owl in that movie. I'm sure people who are watching this will be like, it's this! And then I'll obviously remember it once this video is done. But in any case, you get the idea. You can give them an alignment. I tend to just give animals neutral alignment, but again, that's a choice you get to make. A lot less choices really to make here too. Again, it's familiar, right? It's not something that's going to involve a lot of choice at this point, but you do have some things to make. The one important one being the ancestry. So it shows me the categories here. I'm going to toggle just to show you the invalid ones as well too. Invalid. These are options that you would normally be able to pick, but you would need to be able to do that at a higher level. I don't have enough familiar abilities right now. So at a higher level, I'll be able to pick a fairy dragon or a leshy. Well, actually not a leshy for a wizard, but a spell slime I could probably get once I get higher up and I pick up some additional feats. But let's keep it to the ones we got. Now I'm kind of going with the owl idea here. But you may note, well, hey, that's kind of a drag. I don't have owl as an option. Well, the nice thing about this is that this is Pathfinder, and these are categories, right? So a raven is essentially the same kind of concept as an owl, so I can pick raven. Or I can pick other and call it out as an owl. But I'm just going to pick raven because that'll be enough of a cue for me as a player to go in and make sure I give them things that familiar abilities that are applicable. So, well, for movement wise, as a bird, you may look at this and be like, well, land speed, amphibious, he's a fly speed. Yes, but birds can also walk. So this is what you have to choose between those two, is the land speed. So you pick the land speed. It's going to be able to walk fairly fast. And then you have to pick a familiar ability applying to fly. So I click the plus now, and I have that option to pick flyer. So this gets me essentially the prerequisites I need to have a flying familiar. Raven or an owl or anything like that, sparrow. You would essentially need to have a fly speed. That is a kind of core requirement. Now, I might decide that I want this familiar to be particularly useful. I might decide that they are either tough or maybe they're independent and do their own thing. That's always nice. That's not necessarily a core rulebook one. That's from the Advanced Player's Guide. You can make some interesting choices, but I think for all intents and purposes, I'm going to pick fast movement. Bird definitely flies faster than it walks. So to me, picking fast movement makes a ton of sense. All right, now you have to pick what movement applies to. You see that's in red. So I can just click on it, and in here where it says speed to increase, pick out the actual fly speed instead of the regular speed. So there we go. I've still got one familiar ability resource unspent, but I'm going to leave this way because you got to remember that these resources, familiar abilities and master abilities, are a shared pool. So when I go back to my wizard and go to the under classes and look at the wizard here, you'll note now, scroll down to it, master abilities. I've only got one left. So again, shared pool between the two. So it's kind of thing that it might not necessarily be obvious, but a thing you have to remember that's based off of the class itself. So I'm going to add for this wizard a wizard ability. So it's kind of a shared pool, and I'm going to take a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. I've given my familiar the stuff I wanted to have, and I think I wanted my wizard to have a cantrip connection with them. It gets a little bit of extra magical power, and I want to have an extra cantrip in my repertoire. So when I click that, add and close, boom, that shows up, and I have to now specify a couple things. I got to configure out what my spellcasting option, my spellcasting option is. So I only have the one right now at this level because I am a level 1 wizard, but this might be a choice where you need to look at this depending on whether you've gotten dedications into multiple spellcasting classes. So you have to come back and look at this and provide that kind of information if you say pick up a familiar later on in your adventure and career. So I've got that now, and now I have 5 of 6 memorized. Whereas before I had all of my spells memorized. I now have one extra cantrip showing up here. So let's click the plus and add in one more cantrip. It only shows me the stuff I have: Detect Magic, Electric Arc, Light, Ray of Frost, Read Aura. Let's add in Shield. Yes, I don't know why I didn't add Shield. Let's get that in. That's important. And there we go. Okay, great. You'll notice everything is white now. That's a little bit misleading because technically speaking, we haven't added any gear for this guy. But for all intents and purposes, the requirements have been met to have a character. So this is one of those things where you have to remember too, that like the system is allowing you to do this. It's making sure you do right by it and your validations are all good, but it will let you make a character without gear. So the quick thing to do is to go down to the equipment section and go into gear. Because in Pathfinder 2nd edition, you have equipment kits. So, and I'm a big fan of these. I'm just going to use those to quickly populate all of the gear I want for my wizard. So again, clicking the plus, I will scroll down to my class kit wizard, 12 silver pieces. To buy the wizard kit, I see what's in that wizard kit itself. Some of the stuff I probably care about, some I don't. I'm going to be using the light spell. I'm probably not going to use the torches a whole heck of a lot. So if you wanted to, you could buy things individually instead. I'm a big fan of the kit because it's also discounted and it saves me a ton of work. So buy it, and you can already see it's populated a bunch of this stuff for me. But essentially, I have all my gear marked off now. I can see what's what, what's where, and I'm ready to go. My character's been created. So let's just have one final look, pop over to our play tab, and see our full character. I didn't put in a picture, but that's fine. That's always a thing I can come back to later. But here's my character ready to go, and I am all set. Hope this was helpful. This is the tutorial on creating a first level character using Hero Lab Online for Pathfinder 2nd edition. If there are any comments or questions, they're always welcome. I'll answer them whenever I get a chance to. And happy adventuring.